We're talking about food and love and generational farming and ranchers. Well, then I need to introduce you to the Ralston family farms of north central Arkansas in the beautiful Arkansas River Valley, where they are rice farmers, among other endeavors. This is a family, I hope you're sitting down, that has farmed for 10 generations now. The Ralstons are committed to growing and harvesting food for your family, just as they have done for theirs. Things like regenerative farming, that's a method where the farmers take a keen interest in the soil and water use and fertilizer. The water is from the nearby Arkansas River. Sustainable farming is another tenet of the Ralston family. The family only mills what they grow. They have full traceability from seed to carton. And of course, this is American made, and they are non-GMO products. They have delicious rice in 6 core varieties, including white basmati and aromatic purple and red. Go to their website to see where you can get this outstanding line of a most delicious Arkansas product. RalstonFamilyFarms.com.
We are all finding our way through unprecedented times, a change in perspective of our own life. Suffering is painful, but is also sometimes the catalyst of change. Success is not a one-time thing. It's a revise, a rebuild, a redo until it works. This is my time to teach and nurture those who have chosen to show up. This is our time. With fierce determination, I knew they were worth investing in. Whether it's Evan, Kate, or Merritt, these are the people that I have chosen. This is 2021. We are unstoppable. We are Carper Photo.
She won Most Talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fischer Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fischer.
Okay, so another cookbook. This is part 2 of our chat with Ree Drummond. Another cookbook coming out. How many is this total for you now?
Oh gosh, this is 7, I believe. I could be off. I think 7.
I'm sure I have them all. Yeah. I love them all. So it's amazing that you can think of a new recipe. And I mean, how many recipes do you put in these? 40, 50, 60?
Oh, it's 120 in this one. And usually it has ranged from about 110 to about 130, believe it or not. So we landed at 120 this time, but it's kind of, that's one of the questions I get asked the most is how in the world do you come up with that many different recipes? And I swear some days I think I am one season away from completely being out of things to cook unless I do it standing on my head, and then we can just say, you know, they're all new recipes because they're upside down or something. But
right.
You know, but the thing is, if you ever slow down, that's when it stops. But as long as you stay engaged and creating, and a lot of things obviously are built on other things I've cooked. There's sort of variations on the theme, and things sometimes I try in restaurants if I'm on a trip and I go home and kind of do an at-home version of it. But yeah, that it's every now and then you kind of get a little overwhelmed by the amount of recipes. Now, some of the recipes in this cookbook are recipes that I cooked during my quarantine months of my cooking show. And the part of what informed some of those recipes, and the reason I'm calling the cookbook Super Easy, is that we were, really stuck for a good time frame without certain ingredients. And I had, fortunately, a freezer pretty full of staples and some other kind of freezer-friendly supermarket items. Or I would have been sunk in some ways. I went into our restaurant and kind of depleted a few things in there. But so a lot of the things are freezer supermarket items, staples. I call them superhero shortcut ingredients. And I have a whole section in the cookbook that shows you the glory of prepared pestos in jars and pouches. And then I've got Cool Whip front and center, Lisa. And
Oh,
I'm
no.
not afraid to admit it. I've got some Cool Whip friendly recipes, but I've also got some great, just quick soups that are elegant, that just have kind of a little shortcut ingredient that you'd never know. And so I've got a little brain fog these days. I don't know if it's the 2020 events or the fact that I have a wedding coming up, or maybe it's because I'm 52 and, you know, I'm no spring chicken. But some days I'm just good to remember, you know, remember to put on a shirt.
I get you.
So super easy really is kind of where I am with cooking right now. I'm not looking to set any culinary records.
But one thing you haven't done, Ree, that I really respect, you don't go with the current trend of keto, paleo, gluten-free, grain-free. You just cook. You cook so that people will eat it. Because the other cookbooks that are the niche, families don't want that. If you've got humans to feed, and that's children, husbands, grandparents, relatives, they want real food. And that's pretty much how you've kind of put your course, is to real food. Don't you think that's part of your success?
Well, yes, I appreciate having those cookbooks available for the times that you want to kind of find out what a certain way of eating is all about. With keto especially, I did try keto once, and then I stopped keto. It actually worked for about 10 pounds, but then I just got to a point where I could not eat another avocado, and I love avocados, so I knew something was wrong. You know, if I'm tired of avocados. But in terms of the cookbooks that I want to create, they definitely have to authentically represent what I'm cooking my family. Otherwise, it just wouldn't work at all. And practically speaking, keto or gluten-free or dairy-free probably isn't something that the Drummond household is going to adopt. Hopefully no one will have to do that. But so it's kind of nice just to stay in my lane, basically. It doesn't mean that I'm not willing to try different things. And in fact, in my previous cookbook, it was called The New Frontier. I did try a handful of recipes that could have been considered low carb and a little bit keto friendly, and but when I saw them in the finished book, I thought I'm not sure those belong in my cookbook. You know, they're still delicious and I love them, but that's why this cookbook is so hilariously on the other end of the spectrum with my Cool Whip and my store-bought pizza dough.
And people will love it. And they love authenticity, I think, more than anything. And that's one thing that translates with you on camera or off. I was watching an Instagram Live one time, and your girls, I guess it was around Christmas, maybe it was Christmas Eve or something, and they were doing, and you must have been in your home. So for those of us that watch, we think you live at the lodge, and you don't, but you were in your home. And it was just funny how I could hear you raising them like we all raise our girls, you know, telling them, please don't let them see this messy closet. Please don't let them see.
Oh, was that the Instagram Live?
Yeah, it was an Instagram Live, yes. And it was just so fun to watch, because I thought every parent, every mom can identify with that. It's bringing home the neighborhood kids when the beds aren't made. You're like, wait, let me go in here and get some things cleaned up. And they were panning the room, and they were cooking. I think maybe Paige, one of them was cooking something that night for your family. And it was just fun to watch that you're just you're the cool mom, but you're a regular mom.
Here's the funny thing about that. So you're so right. The girls just go rogue, and they're going to show the piles of underwear and things that fortunately the Food Network audience usually doesn't see. But Paige was making a chocolate cake for, I think it was Christmas Eve. And so Alex said, Paige and I are going to do an Instagram Live. And so she had the phone propped a certain way, and she and Paige were, okay, now you do this. And Alex is sort of interviewing Paige. And I was watching from across the room like, oh, they're so fun and that this is cute. And then I watched the Instagram Live playback, and Alex, the angle of her camera caught this part of our kitchen ceiling that the boys' upstairs toilet leaked. And there's this horrendous like stain on the ceiling from a big plumbing meltdown. And the vent cover is off the ceiling, and it couldn't have been any worse. And it was just right there. And I'm like, Alex, do you
everyone can relate. We get it.
Everyone has stains on their ceiling, but I just had to laugh. I was like, of course, when you're 23, you don't care about things like that. So, but yeah, it's sometimes the girls will just go rogue, and it's those are the fun parts, though. We laughed about that.
I saw where you one time mentioned you're an Enneagram 7, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Firmly.
Same. Are you an 8 wing or a 6 wing? I'm an 8 wing.
Okay, I don't know, and I don't even know enough about Enneagram. Do you have to be a wing that's either one up or one down?
It would have to be, yes, but not everyone. I think some people are true to their number, and I could be wrong, but I've heard people say some people are just their number and they may not have a wing. So
what is the 6? What is the 6 wing?
The 6, they're the skeptical loyalist. And then the 8s are what the CEO of a company is. They're the one that can come in and be forthright with people and are opinionated and don't realize sometimes that they might offend somebody. They don't mean to. They're truth tellers. But they're very direct.
I probably have a tiny 8 wing, not a 6 wing, but tiny 8 wing, but not a lot. I'm very, very much a 7.
Yeah, me too. So I get that. So that I think is part of the allure of the Pioneer Woman and the brand, is that you do like to have fun, and people like seeing, especially during COVID, watching your show was just respite for our brains to see that there was more than one person there. You didn't have masks on, or maybe you did. I don't remember. And this is not a political conversation, but the point is you were families having fun being together. And that's just, you know what, our country's so divided over everything. This pen would divide an entire country right now for some reason, because it's black ink and someone would say, well, you don't like brown ink. Well, no, I just have this pen. So watching you and your family get together like that, I just think is what the country needed and still needs.
Well, that's so kind of you. And I think, being a 7, you can probably relate to this. I was just, I was reading, you can find some pretty in-depth descriptions and analyses of your Enneagram type. So, of course, I'm a 7, so I'm going to read about 7 because,
right.
I need to know more about myself, I guess. But I think I read somewhere, and this is so true, that a 7 we give all of our energy in social situations, and when I'm among a group of people, I'm so afraid that somebody's going to be bored or unhappy, and so I do just intuitively I converse and try to be funny and tell stories, and I enjoy that. But then the flip side of that is that I just go dark. I just get home and turn on Bravo and, get in my yoga pants. And I know that I have to replenish my energy in between times. And so when I've been on book tour before, I love book tour and I love book signings because I look everyone in the eye and we talk and I hear from them. And then I go to the hotel room and suck my thumb for 2 days, before and after, and order room service because being a 7 is, it takes a lot of energy. So, but it's good, and that's who I am. But I had to laugh about that I'm only a 7 because I allow myself to really replenish in between times.
Well, that's known as an ambivert. Someone who is both an extrovert with introvert tendencies to recharge. My recharging would be at Carnegie Hall. I would leave the group, then to go to another group, then to go. Like when I leave the party, I go, now where can we go? And my husband's going, whoa, 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 whoa. He's worn out just watching me do my thing. Because introverts
you
sometimes...
are a true extrovert, and I am definitely, I have to go to the party, and then I have to go home and get settled
Isn't that good that we can know ourselves and know that it's great? I mean, that God made us so unique and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And part of that is someone may be a full extrovert, someone else is a full introvert, and either one can conquer the world. So that's, I think, encouraging.
As we women, as we get older, our yeses and our nos become so much more decisive. I think I am so much better at saying no at the things that I know will deplete me, and saying yes to the things that I know will feed me, or that are in line with the things that I like to do. So I think when you're a woman and you're younger, it takes a lot longer to learn those lessons, because we do want to be everything to everybody, and we are everything to everybody once we start having kids and we've got a spouse and a job, and it is we have a lot of plates in there. So it's nice to get to a point where you know yourself enough to know that saying no is going to feel a lot better than saying yes and dreading it for weeks.
Well, then, is it easy for you to say no then to your agent or to anyone who kind of has their thumb on you, for you to go, that's not a good fit for me?
Very, very easy for me to do that now, and to push back. I am very good at pushing back on aesthetic things. Like when we do product development and something isn't right, I'm just like, I cannot have a plaid skirt. It's not, that's just an example, but
right, I got it.
Or even this does not look like me. So it's easy to do that, but sometimes with opportunities, it can be, it messes with you a little bit, because you think, am I just being a homebody if I say no? And but I know myself enough at this point that I know that if I say yes to this, I'm going to feel cringy later. I'm going to dread it, and I would rather turn down opportunities and not have to dread anything.
Now, whatever happened to the movie On Your Life where we thought Reese Witherspoon was going to play Ree Drummond? Is that, I know Hollywood is obviously on a caution, red light, yellow light, but are you moving forward with those kind of projects, or can you even mention that now?
Oh, yeah. So, that was 2010 when Columbia/Sony bought the movie rights to Black Heels to Tractor Wheels, the book that you mentioned. And that was the little love story about Lad and me. And so it was really fun at the time. I got to meet Reese Witherspoon, and the producer who was initially interested and assigned to the project was an amazing woman named Laura Ziskin. And she was a very powerful female producer in Hollywood. She had produced Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, and she just felt a little bit of an attachment to the story, and I got to meet her. She was amazing. Unfortunately, she passed away from cancer probably about 2014, I would say. And at the time, her projects were tabled. Now, her partner, a really great woman named Pam Williams, and I got back in touch a few years after Laura died, and Pam wanted to sort of bring back Black Heels to Tractor Wheels. And we talked about it, and possibly being sort of more of a TV movie situation. And I ultimately just kind of decided that I think the ship had sort of sailed on the story. And I love the story on its own, and I think it would take a lot of work for me to keep it in the Ree and Lad realm, and not let it become too silly and too movie-ish. So we decided not to do it, but I have nothing but great memories from that whole experience. I got to go and meet Reese and had a great day, and we meet some great people in the process. So, but that's an example of something that we could have made it happen, but it would have required a certain level of management and energy from me that wasn't right for me anymore. So the book stands on its own.
It's a great book. It's a sweet book, and that's something everyone should get a copy of. Now let's talk about what you like to binge. Are you into the true crime genre like the rest of us?
Yes. So I was a big early true crime podcast person. Serial, of course, podcast. Adnan Syed was my first big binge. I actually binged it driving my daughter to Texas A&M. So that's
That's great.
and then I listened.
Did you do Sugartown or S-Town after that?
S-Town is my favorite podcast of all time, and I just
Wasn't that great?
It's beyond. It's a work of art to me. To me, it's like a Pulitzer situation. But I put a lot of stock in the podcasts I listen to. But I just think that's. I cry when I listen to S-Town because it's just so beautiful. And my two friends, Sophie Hudson and Melanie Schenkel, we'd like to talk about S-Town because Sophie, they're old blogger friends of mine, but Sophie lives in Alabama, so she can kind of relate. But I got to a point where this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I think I'm desensitized, and so it takes a lot of true crime to hold my interest. It either needs to be really well done, like the original Serial podcast, or it just has to be the craziest story that I've ever heard.
Did you do the Dirty John, Dr. Death, and all that? Because those were good.
Dirty John was very good.
Dirty John was very good, and then they made that into a series. But the Lori Vallow story just dropped. Dateline now. Keith Morrison has his podcast, and everything he says, you're
Doomsday
gripping.
Mom. I listened to it.
Oh, was it not unbelievable?
It was.
And that story has not been told. I mean, the whole story's not been told because there's still more to that story.
That is a heartbreaking story. I also love. It took me a while to give this podcast a chance, but My Favorite Murder with Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark. I started listening to them on a book tour, and they sort of became my friends. Just in my mind.
Do they know that? Yeah, right.
Well,
right.
Probably not. But in my mind, they were my friends on planes, and I'd listen. But but then my other binge, I'm hopelessly devoted to Bravo shows, particularly Vanderpump Rules and a lot of the Real Housewives franchises. And part of it is, it's like I've been in this relationship for so many years with these women on Real Housewives, and I can't walk away now. I have way too much time and focus invested in our relationships.
There was drama yesterday with the Salt Lake City wives. So you'll have to Google that when you get a minute.
And in fact, I haven't watched Salt Lake City yet. I tend to stay with my OG casts, but people are telling me I have to watch Salt Lake. So and I'm just not ashamed at the TV I like to watch. It's kind of my safe place.
But so my husband walks in and he'll go, let me guess, another true crime. And I'll say, yes, this one is abductions, though. I had a big abduction thing where I was watching all the abductions. And he'd say, because murder's not enough? I'd go, Because once you get sucked in, then you start looking on your device. It'll show you, if you're interested in this, you're going to like this. And then you go down a rabbit hole. So I do it also because Hulu has some obscure ones that aren't well done. I mean, they're Lifetime movies. They're not that great. But clearly, I have the time to watch them because I get sucked into those as well. So I get it.
Lad is a total just spectator to my downward spiral of crime media. But what I do two things. So my AirPods are my best friend, and I've been on the Mother of the Bride diet, so I'm doing a lot of walking and rowing, and but I've got to have a podcast when I walk down our road. And unfortunately, I listen to true crime most of the time, and I scare myself, and because I'll be like 2.5 miles from our house on a rural road, and I'm like, this is where it always happens, But then the other part of it is I'll listen to a 1-episode podcast. Some podcasts just cover one crime per episode. And then Lad will come in and I'll be on my computer, like Googling like Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, totally.
Marital murder. And, you know, I look, there are these mug shots and Lad will walk in and go, what are you doing? You know what? What are you doing? I'm like, never you mind.
Did you watch the one on Hulu? I think she might have gotten the Academy Award for it, where she was the mom with the Munchausen syndrome by proxy and had Gypsy Rose, the daughter.
Well, I listened.
Oh my gosh!
I listened,
and I listened to a podcast with that. Right, me too.
That was something else. That is an incredible story, really.
Yeah.
I forget what. And did you listen to? This is one of my favorite true crime shows ever, The Jinx, on HBO, which is Robert Durst, the heir to a big fortune. You have to watch The Jinx. It's amazing.
Putting it down right now.
It's got such a major development at the very end.
Okay, speaking of good shows to watch, did you see Your Honor on Showtime with Bryan Cranston?
No.
It was better than his Breaking Bad days. It's probably the best work he's ever done. And some of it was shot during COVID, and so it delayed their production. But it's one of the most, I had trouble sleeping, and my husband and I couldn't watch it before 7 o'clock because then we couldn't sleep. We'd lie in bed talking about, well, now what's going to happen? Then what do you think's going to happen? And it's the length you would go to protect a child.
Okay. Is it a true story?
No.
See, I have a hard time. This is a problem I have, is that I have a really hard time with fiction. I have to consume.
I agree. I understand.
Documentaries and I want to see the news clippings, and
Me too.
Lad cannot stand documentaries. He wants to be taken away with
I love
big
documentaries.
epic movie, and he wants to forget about real life when he watches
Then
TV.
did you see Crime Scene at the either Cecil or Cecil Hotel and Nightstalker? Because in Nightstalker had a part in the Cecil or Cecil Hotel, however they pronounce it, that he was a part of that. And those are crazy stories. And it had actual footage from LA from 20, 30 years ago, whenever, well, his was in the 80s, but the other things with that hotel, that was crazy. And that every bit of that is true.
I feel sorry for your listeners who have no interest in gory crime things.
I can't imagine.
I could talk on and on about it, but
then they're not my people. My people are people that want to know about these stories about families that they have no idea who they are, and then you spend all your time on your device going down the rabbit hole, catching up with what has happened since then, because that's what happens. Once these are produced, as you know, and then they drop, but it could have been in production 18 months ago. Well, since then, something's happened.
Right. I think what I like, I guess I keep saying because I'm getting older, but when it gets into the realm of child abuse, I can't, my heart breaks too much and I can't listen.
I can't do it. Mm-mm.
But what I really love is the justice side of things. I love, not necessarily the investigation, but I love it when the guy or woman gets caught and there's justice, especially for families. But and I've been listening to a lot of white collar crime podcasts, like what's it called? Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos, the big corporation. It was worth billions of dollars, and it was all sort of smoke and mirrors. The Dropout is the name of the podcast. I highly recommend it. But it's just interesting, just watching sort of the whole thing that unfolds. So I can't explain. I'm trying to put a positive spin on why I listen to crime stories, but I can't.
Girl, you don't have to justify with me. No, you're good. Because I'm looking at my list. I keep a list on my phone of what to watch. The whole Free Britney thing. There was Britney Spears TV show. That was Hulu, I think, or that was somebody. What? You just start Googling and you'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah,
New York Times did that right. Oh, then you know.
I watched
the Paris Hilton biography, so good. So good.
It's really nice. It's nice to see the story that was really happening as we were seeing, all of these celebs become famous but it is interesting to see, the struggles and the real story, because everybody has a real story, behind.
The Paris Hilton one affected me that way because I watched her be a wayward teen, and we were manipulated to watch one side of the story when her parents really were thinking this was not the best fit for her. Of course, they sent her to that camp and she was abused, and that is uncovered in that documentary, where then her mother is presented with this harrowing story that her own daughter was abused at this camp where they sent her off to. And so my heart broke as a mother. But I also just watched that and thought, I had no idea. I just thought she was some dumb blonde, and she's really smart. Paris Hilton is really smart, and now she's grown up. And
I love seeing things like that, where you get to know a person on it, a lot better than what you've always believed.
I think I had a lump in my throat. I think I cry easily anyway, but I over empathize with people, so I put myself in their shoes and think, oh, that's why you walk through that. That's why this happened. And then once you start seeing the other stories that were woven in, like Britney Spears, that mental illness is not funny. So it's never funny to me. And making fun of somebody during that, just not funny. Addiction's not funny to me. But once you start seeing that that's woven through the story, it makes sense. So my cynical mind always thinks when I hear a story that there's addiction or mental illness a part of it, because it's such outrageous behavior. And not as a judgment thing, but just as a deductive reasoning. And I guess it's all those years listening.
That's another, here we are getting older again. I'm talking about it, but you do just have such an increased understanding after raising children and having family. And you do understand that how trauma plays into a person's decisions in life, and, abuse and neglect. And certainly I've learned that in my foster parent training that was required when Jamar came to live with us. So I love learning about human beings and how things build into decisions and why people take one path over another. And so watching a documentary about Paris Hilton and Britney Spears is just another way to increase our perspective about, re-examining things we've always believed about people, that we know, not just celebrities, but people in our own families. So it's good to kind of knock down assumptions that we've always had and re-examine things.
Well, that's your assignment. You watch those.
7 Enneagrams are getting deep today.
I know, because we want to have fun, but we also want to understand people. I always like knowing about people. So I've got my assignment, the Jinx, and then the Dropout. And then you've got your assignment, the two, the Britney Spears and the Paris Hilton ones. And we'll talk via social media somehow.
And
so
we will
I know
both read Dostoevsky.
Oh, wait, those are hard words.
Not really.
Okay. All right. I'll have to put that down too. Hey, thank you so much for doing this. To my live studio audience in the other room, we thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fischer Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fischer Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.